WarsawJS.
So welcome everyone. Actually, this presentation may be a bit edgy. I hope not too much, but those are topics that basically, well, capture a lot of our emotions, and I think are and will be impactful both to our work lives and in general the future. So I'd like to talk about two topics about AI-generated content. One is about images, and the other is about text. By text, I mean anything. So not only text as in what we say and what you write, but also, for example, code, mathematics, and anything that can be written as a sequence of characters. And just curious, like a small poll, how many of you have ever used DALLE or image or Stable Diffusion or any other algorithm for image generation? Like, okay, quite a few, I think 1/3. And how many of you have ever tried ChatGPT or any other text generation model? Oh, like almost everyone. So it's interesting, and so maybe you already know much more than I do. But it's like, but it would be also interesting to exchange opinions, exchange views that matter. So basically, just I know that for some of you, you don't have much time. So just if you want to leave now, just there's a quick summary. And well, everything else will be the details. So when it comes to AI, which is artificial intelligence, it's an interesting topic because we used to call it, well, we used to call anything AI. For example, simple scripts that make bots or bots moving in a game or any AI that replicate some functions of cognition, even very simple ones. But also it's interesting that once we move to deep learning, things sped up a lot. For example, less than 3 decades ago, one of the creators of this field, Douglas Hofstadter, thought that the grand challenge of AI is to distinguish A from I. And of course, like it's very, very hard to write programmatic rules to say what is A. And for example, it's A from various fonts. But 6 years later, it was a very, very simple introductory data set for deep learning. So basically, within the first 20 minutes, or maybe half an hour of my introduction to deep learning, participants were able to distinguish A from I. It didn't take years, months, or even days to do so. And when it comes to AI, but now, especially with models like GPT, BERT, and Stable Diffusion, we go much further. This one fake TED presentation, some kind of trailer from Prometheus, the movie, in which it was set in well, the current year. And what was interesting, it was about creating androids that were able to think and act as humans, or maybe actually more efficient versions of humans. And we are not there yet. We are not there yet. Actually, it's very hard to create a robot that moves smoothly. But at the same time, we are able to create various images and texts which very often at a human level, and very often well above average human level. So very often it's below the experts, but sometimes it's well enough to accomplish quite a few tasks. And when it comes to me, I know it's very controversial, but when it comes to me, this kind of AI is one of the greatest breakthroughs when it comes to information and how we share with other humans. And those revolutions basically change the way how we interact with each other, with technology, and how much knowledge we can use. For example, with writing, we were able to transmit knowledge from a place to a place, even if we couldn't talk to again in person, or even if the person lived hundreds of years ago. And with each subsequent technology, it made it easier and faster to disseminate knowledge and skills. When it comes to AI, there's one difference that even within the internet age, it took not a year to get the first million users, but literally 5 days. So things speed up. So let's start from the simpler topic, image generation. By simpler, I mean, well, it's images. When it comes to text, it's slightly more general, and I will show that a bit later. So I was privileged to be one of the first users of DALLE 2, except for OpenAI workers and employees, and had a lot of fun with that. For example, generating, it was one of my first images on the left, a spirit in a waterfall of hearts. Then there were some more tricky, how to say, controversial ones, like a tarot card with a pineapple pizza. And the third one is basically, it's Prometheus who turned into a solar panel salesman. Well, he moved with times, right? And it was kind of interesting because just after writing a few sentences, I was able to create such images. When it comes to my own benchmark, it's around, it's like below, I mean, that way, I wouldn't pass a benchmark of a 5-year-old kid. So yeah, so it's way above my level. And I had much more fun. Also, well, various workers. This thing I think is looks like a good picture for someone's LinkedIn profile. And it's also interesting just to see how much it can do, how much in detail, based on a short caption. But it's not always that easy, in that sense that, for example, this one is a stolen prompt. It's not one I discovered. It's one that I saw in someone else's generated image. And there's a lot of this tweaking, tuning, how to generate images we want. And of course, even though I'm able to generate such things, I don't consider myself an artist. In the same sense, just because someone's able to use a mobile phone to create a picture does not mean someone is a professional photographer. But when people say that, oh, just AI art cannot be art because, and usually it's followed by because so, I don't believe that, in the sense that, well, you can say that, oh, yes, created by machine, not human hands, and I think artifact, it's from Latin to handmade something. But well, you can create things with a hammer or a paintbrush. So it's the question is it still handmade or not? And also the people say that, oh, it takes just a click to get the results. But the thing is that you can say everything in the same way about photography. Yes, it also takes a click. But it does not mean that every single photo is a masterpiece. Actually, sometimes it takes years of training, years of hunting for the right scene, a lot of knowledge about post-processing, a lot of thinking what to create and how. And if you tried creating images with, say, Stable Diffusion, you will see that it's not that easy to create something really great. It takes a lot of effort. And sometimes you can be lucky. And the same way with photography, just you can create something wonderful by chance, but the same way as someone said that any smart person can write a book, but a writer is someone who is able to create more than one good book. And the same thing, I think, is with any kind of endeavors. And for example, there are quite a few things that when I saw, I was mesmerized. Whoa, it's nice. And also, and very often, the same people also able to not to create a single interesting image, but quite a few. So I think, yes, it's skill. It's not only using or downloading a model and having free gains from that. And when it comes to but I think what's important is how it impacts the market, how it impacts the workforce, how it impacts the general workflow. And I think there are two lines. One type of things is basically things that we can do cheaper, faster. So things that can be done by quite a few designers, artists. Just in our case, it won't take hours or days. It will take, say 100 milliseconds. And the other one is things which are different. So things which most likely wouldn't be created without this kind of technology. And I think both of the approaches are interesting. In one case, you can, for example, iterate much faster. So you can give an image to a customer and not wait for days for the second iteration, but say a few seconds. And after a single hour of testing, we can polish our graphics for a given target audience, as for which we would need at least a year or two with a typical workflow. And in some sense, it's not like even not like taking job from designers, but promoting everyone to a senior position when they lead the process. Because also is a question where to start from, what to do, what's the next step, what do you want to show? And the other one is basically a different tool. And in this case, it makes design process strictly better. By strictly better, I mean it adds one more tool to the existing set. People can use that, people can not use that, people can use that in some steps of the process, and potentially it's possible to create something different or better, or also faster sometimes. But there are quite a few dangers. One, which people talk a lot, is plagiarism. So basically that people can generate content from, well, from corporations, but also, which I think is like kind of, well, even more dangerous and sadder, from independent creators who put years or decades of their effort, and now other people basically use their work and they don't get neither credit nor compensation. And there are quite a few approaches to that, both legal-wise, ethical-wise, and economic-wise. And in my take is basically that it's a tool as anything else. So yes, you can copy someone's content with any other piece of software by hand. You can get inspired too much, when in principle, it's a different piece of work, but in practice, everyone can see that it's related to someone else. But there's one big difference, is that usually to copy someone's content, it takes ill will. So, okay, you see that you take someone's work, change a bit, and sell it somewhere else. But in this case, you can generate a very nice image and be oblivious to the fact that, for example, it's basically taken for someone else's style. So we need to think deep how to approach this problem in a way that we don't steal someone else's work. It's not an easy problem. I think it's very likely that we need to be able to check if a generated image is not too close to something that exists, both in the terms of content and in terms of style. And the question is like, okay, so some people say, oh, just with Stable Diffusion, there's no more room for designers, visual artists. I don't think so. So of course, it's a hypothesis. It can be verified. Well, it will be verified in the next years. But I think it adds one more tool. Yes, it will change the market. Yes, it may be difficult for some people who need to change their change focus of their work, especially if they have invested years of work in developing the style. How things will turn out, well, I don't know exactly. And also, like, if you think that, oh, just with the perfect AI, it's possible to create anything to any level of detail with the best quality possible, it's not possible. It's not possible no matter what's the progress of AI. Why? Because of information theory. In the sense that, say, we have this kind of prompt, make a drawing about friendship. Is there a single picture that captures this idea? No, no one knows. So like 50-50, I guess. Okay. Some people think that there's a single picture that captures this idea, some not. I think there isn't. Like the same way with any story, with any book, with any poem, with any drawing or painting, there is a huge number of approaches from different angles, very often exactly because they are based on someone's experience, aesthetics, approach, culture, anything. And in this case, in principle, okay, you can expand this prompt, but at some point you expand this whole prompt to a whole book so that it be able to draw a picture. And maybe it should be much simpler to draw it by hand. And the next topic is text generation. And even 2.5 years ago, it was at the level that it made, it was to some extent awesome, to an extent creepy. Here, like I wrote a text which was kind of philosophical or religious, and some people were actually shocked. Like, oh, just it's impossible to create this kind of content. Why AI is able to do so? And it felt like it kind of touched some kind of human sacrum that, okay, machines can be fast, machines can be efficient, good at calculation, but why is able to create text that maybe makes sense? And the thing is that, it's a very simple model. It's not a model that actually has the concept of whole world, whole universe, anything. It's a very simple model that basically predicts the next word. So for example, if you have text, I really enjoy drinking, it can be a few different beverages, can be tea, beer, water, anything. And it turns out that with this simple task, if we create a very advanced model, like so-called transformers, which is like GPT is a transformer, other models like BERT also are transformers, we are able to teach it a language. We are able to teach it quite a few advanced concepts. Of course, we need to provide it, to give it a lot of data from various sources. And but what is important here, this model, by its design, does not think in a way we do. So it's not this kind of loop that it thinks back, it says something. It's not a conversation. So by design, it does not follow a typical conversation. It just extends a text. If this text happens to be conversation, it may extend a conversation. And what is even more important, it does not convey any kind of ground truth. So sometimes it may produce that something is correct, sometimes not. And if it happens that, for example, in the internet, there are much more conspiracy theories than true stories about a given thing or any way established theories about a given thing, it will generate a conspiracy theory. And here we need to be very, very careful which data we train it on. We need to be very, very careful how we evaluate it. And also, with every result, we need to be very careful. We need to double check it. It's not like that because it's awesome AI, it means that it's correct. Actually, sometimes it even does not try to be correct. And if you play it with ChatGPT, just like if you don't know what's under the hood, it's a very concrete GPT model with some kind of things around that, so it looks like a chat. And also, there are a few mechanisms to make it less likely to generate offensive content. It's not fail-proof. There were even stories of people who hacked ChatGPT to give them recipes to how to synthesize amphetamine. But it takes a lot of creativity to do so. But with such AI models, it's impossible to block it from such, because it may be somewhere, and It's a huge thing and very hackable. With this model, this raw model, in this case, it's like the newest one is Text DaVinci 003. It's less well, it's less safe than ChatGPT, and sometimes it can generate some offensive content. So we need to be very careful if we give it to any user or client, because well, they don't not necessarily they will know that it's this model. They will just think that our assistant has very nasty views, or is very rude, for example. But as you see, like this model, just it's text generation. So with each, say, word, a token, it predicts the next word, and out of the whole list of words, it picks by chance one of possible extensions. Again, it's not about predicting any kind of ground truth, which is something actually is good, because thanks to that, it's not about ground truth. It's you are also able to generate fake data for testing algorithms, or you can generate, say, poems, which can be very metaphorical, not necessarily factual, and you can use it for quite a few other applications. And some people say, oh, just this model is dumb. I talked with ChatGPT, and it's not able to solve some very complicated questions about a very niche field in psychology. And it's true. Even more, sometimes this model makes very silly mistakes. For example, say, oh, -15 is a positive number. And when you try to correct this algorithm, they say, no, I'm very certain. Why? Because again, it's a text generation. So if it started from this conversation of being someone who is very stubborn and not good at maths, it will continue. It's likely to continue. So people like sometimes very surprised that, okay, it's so wrong. I tried to correct ChatGPT, but still it gives wrong results. And sometimes by design, it means that it'll be very hard. But at the same time, if we, this one actually is by Facebook, there are some other ones, the next one by Google, so don't worry. They're able to solve very complicated tasks. If any of you have ever attended the Math Olympiad, you know that it's very hard. It's like one of the hardest competition for intellectual competition for high school students. So I guess most of you us here wouldn't be able to solve a single task for this Olympiad, myself included. And at the same time, some models are able to do so. So it's not only about solving simple tasks in math, but actually solving one of the most challenging ones. Maybe not the most challenging maths, but still very ambitious ones. And it's similar when it comes to code. So it's also possible this alpha code is by DeepMind, which is, well, by Google. And they also able to create whole solutions just based on their text descriptions. And very often, those questions are not simple. And it's at this level that, even like this one and other algorithms, at this level that they are able to solve typical advanced high school exams in computer science. Well, I don't know if you've, I guess, well over the average. And it's one thing. And second thing, it's, well, it's, we are at the next step that we can give a specification for a program and generate code, which used to be something basically impossible for a machine. Also, it's kind of interesting when you have these transformer models that you can, again, look at each single piece, see the same way as it generates content, but also there are some ways to inspect model and see where it looks at when it comes to the input text. So sometimes even you can see, oh, just it generates this kind of loop because it saw that it needs to, I don't know, calculate a given coefficient or a given or count a number, in this case, count the number of pairs which such and such. And when it comes to such things, regardless if you use it for image generation or chats or code generation, this is a new skill that we need to be learning from engineering. So basically being able to talk with algorithms, having some kind of common language. Sometimes it takes quite a few of trials and error to be able to generate something which is consistent with our needs. For example, if you say something like, oh, let's generate an algorithm which sorts a list, maybe very likely it's going to write a very simple algorithm, maybe very dumb. But we say, oh, write a very fast, efficient, well-written and well-commented algorithm for sorting, is likely that it's going to create an algorithm which is much better. Because again, here it's not about generating the ground truth, but in some sense priming it for generating what we want. And I think it will change the way how we write software. It's not the first step, because there were like dozens of steps that made it faster, starting from soldering transistors to punch cards, to assembly language, to C, to Python, to any other solutions. But for me, what is much more, is a much better analogy is Stack Overflow. So very often it takes 5 minutes. Yes, thank you. So it's like very often it takes a few minutes to solve a problem that it used to take a few weeks, because you will say a very tricky error in a software library. And but now just you look in, oh, I see, because someone else solved that. With this thing, we can do the same thing, but there is an issue that even though we can solve that, it does not mean it's correct. Or if you can solve that, it does not mean you can put this piece of code in our software. The same way as with Stack Overflow. Quite a few people just copy and paste algorithm without thinking. Sometimes it works, but even if it does, it may be dangerous, it might be incorrect, and it can have many other issues. So in this case, like, okay, so this picture, so it may be much easier to generate code and much harder to debug or even know if this code is relevant. Because this kind of algorithm can be much better at creating code which looks like correct, that code that actually is correct. And when it comes to those kind of algorithms, it already saved my time, because one thing is having fun. Fun with generating some texts, fun with images, but also, like, for example, once I need to write a recommendation letter. It's not like I made a fake one. It's like would be unethical and also wrong for so many reasons. Just I wrote bullet points, main achievements, main like things I would like to complement, and it turned this list into this into this format of a recommendation letter. I didn't want to reinvent the wheel of a recommendation letter. So then I changed a few things, and it was done too. Thank you. But also, like, a few things, I even used it for software. Also, like, sometimes it didn't work, but actually it gave me an idea. And sometimes I even I used it for some emotional consulting, and it was very wise, much wiser than, I don't know, like benchmark of 95% of people, I have to say. And well, some people it's dangerous, and there are quite a few jokes about that. This like thing with the edges one, I guess, is like that. Basically, some people think that it's going to kill us all. I don't think so. It's like things like it's very. It's kind of a religious concept. We are thinking that basically we created that, it's like knows everything, has all power, is immortal, and will bring us salvation doom. And I think it's a tempting idea, emotionally captivating, but at the same time dangerous. And if you go into details, I don't think it's the case. But at the same time, there are things that will matter. And the things that matter is that it will impact workforce. It will depend how we use that, if it's open or not, and how we regulate that, which may be good for us, but not necessary, because sometimes regulations can be in favor of big players, not necessarily the society. And when it comes to biggest challenges, like just to finish, is like this long-term reasoning, relation to environment. But I think the hardest one for now is to be able to draw a hand. It's like very tricky. Give it a try. Thank you.
So you have a question.
Thank you. Yeah. Hello. Thank you for your speech. Actually, I tried to make AI pictures by myself, but the one thing I worried is about the question not only for you. I wanted to ask how many professional artists do you have who are drawing the pictures you have at your home and you know them personally, and do you know how is complicated the life of artist who is like born with this talent from the every like from the first brief. Same with those who are writing something, writing books, who are becoming our culture. And this is our birth given talents. It's not like could be a person could learn how to be an artist. This is the vision of the world, the way of thinking, and the how we are different. Isn't that a step to the middle of nowhere, where most of people who have like mathematics skills are replacing like humanity itself, because these unique people, this is our like this is what we have in future, and etc. Remember when first Tesla, for example, launched the electric vehicle, nobody believed that it will replace like other types of petroleum, but it did. And the result, this is the final goal, to replace the petroleum cars. So what do you think of that? Thank you.
Well, it's like a very long question, so just, but in general, I said two things. One thing, this slide with the idea of friendship, it will depend on approach. It will depend our talents, experience, everything. The second thing is the case with photography. So yes, photography changed the whole market of portrait painters. Did it, and in this case, people move with the talents, their skills. Some things are transferable, some not. When it comes to, but I cannot say anything more, especially if such technology that changes at that pace.
If because you said that there is programs which make drawings with lots of hands and so on, and it is not really we can say that it is not really reflection of reality, yes. And what because I started to think if it is somehow reflection of reality, but for example, in minds of people that look at world and see people with more fingers or so on. And what do you think about it?
Well, I don't understand the question, but in some sense, yes, some people have like 6 fingers. It's called polydactylia. But it's not the most common pattern because the fingers. And believe me, this is, I would say, a sane hand. Sometimes hands have no ends, or they have tentacles, or things which are not even physically possible. And I guess for some reason, those kind of patterns are right now much harder to reproduce by those kind of algorithms, very concrete ones. Or maybe, I don't know, well, actually there are some, I don't know, tentaclish overlords, and they want to send a message that, you know, that they are behind those kind of algorithms.
Okay.
So I wanted to say that it was like really cool talk, and I really enjoyed that. And I have really brief question. Do you think that there's any type of signature that allows us to distinguish this AI-generated content from the human one? And if there's not, do you think it will be possible in the future or not?
It's a tricky question because it changes. So like when you have one algorithm, we can even use ChatGPT to say, okay, tell me if this paragraph is AI generated or not. And it usually makes a correct guess. But if you use ChatGPT and say, okay, write a text, but in a way that it does not look as if it was generated by AI, it does not work with the same guessing. And it's a tricky question. For example, when I look at text and it has no errors, no typos, it's very smooth, balanced emotionally, my guess it's AI.
Hi, Piotr. Thank you for your speech. It was very interesting. And you have very interesting and new idea for me. But now every engineer is a senior engineer. And because of it, I would like to understand a little bit more. I mean, now we need to work hard to understand how to build good architecture, good application. And you said that now everybody is a senior. So how you think will change the way to become a senior, because you cannot be a senior without an experience. You cannot understand from scratch how to build good application.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for this question. And actually, it's a tricky one because, well, it's in some sense everyone is a senior, but at the same time, as you said, to achieve seniority, you need to learn a lot, practice a lot. And in some sense, maybe the first step wouldn't change that much. Because again, if you don't know what is the pieces of code generated by AI, you don't know if they make sense. And I think that it's easier to start, but at the same time, there'll be this, how to say, gap from the level that you are able to write code, that we are able to understand it much better and understand the whole ecosystem, the whole architectural program to use it. Well, again, it's not an easy answer. I think you can extrapolate on, say, Stack Overflow. I think at least it's for me, to the best of my own knowledge, the best example to refer to.
One more time, Piotr Migdał, everybody. Give him a
Thank you.
hand.